Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to the Conquering Your Clownfish podcast. I'm thrilled to introduce my special guest today, Sylvia Almond. Sylvia is coming to us from Utah, so we're practically neighbors. She's an extra lucky mom to her son, Jordan, who has Down syndrome. His diagnosis came as a surprise on the day he was born. Since that moment, Sylvia shares that Jordan has been a profound teacher for their family, showing them the true significance of love and compassion for others. Sylvia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here. As we were prepping for this show and just getting to know each other and catch up a little bit, I found out that Sylvia is from Chile, which I have a big heart for Chile. And the reason being is my daughter lives in Chile right now. My daughter Brinley is serving a mission for our church in Chile, and she's been there, I think, about 2 weeks now, 2 weeks to the day almost. And so that was a special connection there. So, Sylvia, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is going to be a fun episode to be able to talk about your family. You have a really awesome family, a big family. And so I think that's a good place to start, is just sharing about your family and your children.
Sure. So I was married for 14 years and I had 2 girls and a boy. So that's where it comes Haley, Karen, and TJ. And then my husband now had 2 boys, Jaron and Jaden. And then we decided to have a baby, and then we got Jordan. So we're combined, and then we have one of our own.
So that's beautiful. And so I also, if I'm not mistaken, you have some grandbabies as well.
Yeah, we have 3 granddaughters. And okay, remind me the age, because I wrote them down for you.
You did a good job. I show 10, 7, and 4.
Yes. And they're so fun. And it actually been a total blessing to have those grandbabies, because then Jordan has someone to play with because he's age. So we have a 10-year-old that gets along with him the most. So he's super overprotective of the little girls. It's so sweet.
So let's talk about blending your family. And I want to talk about blending your family before Jordan. And what that looks like after Jordan. And so I can speak from experience. I feel like Andrea and I have very much a blended family. And so we've been married for 22 years, but we have 11 children, 7 of which are adopted. And we have a son from China. We have 2 little girls that we adopted domestically through foster care. And then we have 4 children from Colombia, and they are siblings. And so especially this most recent adoption, our 4 children, they've been home about a year and a half, and they were all pretty much teenagers. 3 of the 4 were teenagers when we adopted them. And so that was like starting a whole new family with our other 7 children, and blending a family is not easy at all. And so I'm way curious to hear. So when you guys were married, how was that? And talk to me about before and after with Jordan.
Okay, so before we had Jordan, our kids were little. I believe we have 2 kids that are the same age, the 2 boys, his boy and my boy, were about 5 or 6. And then the kids got along great. The problem was me. So one of his kids didn't like me. So it was a struggle, always. And then I get pregnant and I have Jordan, and it was like it all went away. It was
really
so crazy. Yes. Like it was a totally different kid after Jordan was born. And maybe he never even realized that, but we did. I think he learned to appreciate more who I was, and now I don't have any issues with these kids. But our family, like I said, like the kids blended super well. They still, we don't have any of our kids at home anymore. They're all grown and gone and doing their own thing, and they still communicate. They treat each other like real siblings. So it's amazing. Yeah.
I figured that might be the case if there was any type of disruption or challenge that
Yeah.
oftentimes, especially a little baby
Yes.
with Down syndrome,
Yes.
has a superpower to be able to bring people together and share.
Totally.
With our kids that we adopted from Colombia, our oldest son, John, he is 18. And as you can imagine, being adopted when you're 17 years old,
Yeah.
that's a struggle. Like
Right.
that is a lot to take on. Not to mention coming from a different country, a different culture, a completely
Uh-huh.
different language. And, John and his siblings came from a very rural part of Colombia.
Okay.
They were not in the city by any means. And so coming to the United States and experiencing all of that change is just very hard. Well,
Yeah.
John has a sibling,
Uh-huh.
Ash, who is our biological son that has Down syndrome, who is 17. He's like the
Okay.
same age, right? In fact, they're in the same grade at high
Uh-huh.
school,
Uh-huh.
and they ride the bus together, and they become close friends. And it's funny because John still does not speak a lot of English, like very little English.
Really?
Nash doesn't speak Spanish, even though he thinks he does sometimes. With
That's what Jordan does too.
he'll just start speaking Spanish, and or you just go along with it. Well, I have seen Nash be the glue for John, especially, that he is his protector. He is always going up to him, giving him a hug, and like genuinely looking in his eyes and just saying, John, you good? Are you good? Are you okay?
Oh,
And just loves them.
you're
And then he'll
sweet.
go up to him and he'll rub his back and he'll say, John, you're a good boy. And it just melts my heart to be able to see how Nash has been able to break down walls, break down
Yeah.
barriers and challenges that naturally come with blending a family,
Yeah.
simply because of that superpower. So it doesn't surprise me that Jordan has a similar effect.
Yeah, for sure. And Jordan doesn't like any contention. So if he's at school and someone is crying, he's the first one to go hug the kid that's crying. I take him to school maybe once a week. He sleeps in because the bus comes at 7. He has to get up at 6:10. It's way early for him, and he's
Yeah.
12. And so it's been a struggle all year with that. But so I take him in sometimes a little later. And yesterday, he knows everybody. They call him Mr. Social. Um, and he's only 12. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on with this kid? So I walk in. He knows everyone's names. He says hi to everybody. He walks in. He says, I'm late. They ask every time, did you want a pass to go to class? He say, yes. He gets his pass. He goes on down the hallways, and he's just saying hi to everybody, and he names people, and I'm like, who are you?
Yep.
It's insane. And then yesterday, I took him late. So he gets into the class, and they have peer tutors in his class. I don't know what
They
state
do
are
the
you in?
same. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're just up the street from you. I live in Highland.
Oh, okay, okay. So, he has peer tutors, and each kid has a peer tutor. So let's say there's 12 kids, there's 12 peer tutors in the class, one for each kid. And Jordan goes in, and at the very beginning of the year, he would say, I'm back, and nobody would say anything because they didn't know him because it's the first time in junior high. And I was like, oh, sad. Because like last year, everybody knew him and everybody would come and hug him. Okay, so now we walk in and he's like, hey, I'm back. And everybody, Jordan. And it's insane. It's like a party. He is very social. He's very kind. Yeah, he doesn't love contention at all. Even if, you're talking to your husband a little louder, he's like, Mama, be nice. Can you be nice to him? So my husband can never get in trouble because he tells me I can't raise my voice at all.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah, he sounds like
that's because
such a
of that.
wonderful boy, and that's
Yeah.
just the superpower that those kids have
And I
for sure.
think and I think at the very beginning, when I first had Jordan, I had so many questions in my head. I remember me and Jason, well, we went to the hospital, didn't know we were having a son with Down syndrome. We thought everything was fine. 5 weeks early, I'm like, oh, I'm just a little scared for his lungs, that's it. But when he was born and he comes out, the first thing I noticed is his tongue is like doing this like over and over, and it was longer than like my other kids did that too. You know, little babies do that like that. And immediately I knew I had a panic attack. The doctor was trying to calm me down and just saying, no, I think he looks like your husband. I don't think there's anything different. And I'm like, no, I'm a mom. I can tell something is different. So through
Did
that
you
whole
know?
day,
Did you know
no.
Down syndrome when you saw him? You just could sense something was different.
Yes. No, I knew it was Down syndrome. Like,
Okay.
for some reason, the eye, the almond shape, the tongue, I don't know. I didn't see anything else wrong with his body. So, and then just the face. And I was like, he's Down syndrome. And they were trying to tell me to calm down and not to think that way. But yeah, they were doing, after the delivery, I talked to my husband and he's like, they were doing some testing where they were lifting his legs up because they have low tone. So, and he said, I wanted to tell the nurse to stop because they just kept doing this. And so his little legs would just drop, you know? And so, anyway, yeah, I had a full on panic attack where my whole face was numb, my arms. It was really scary. It was really, really scary because it was unexpected. And even though, you know, I wouldn't change anything about him right now or ever, I was gonna love him no matter what. Because they offer that test and you're like, oh, what are the chances? You know, you don't think it's gonna happen. All my other kids were healthy. Why would that happen? I'm 37. I'm not even past 40. But there's so little that we know about Down syndrome when it comes to the mother's age, because now I see 20-year-olds having kids with Down syndrome. So the age
That's
is
right.
very little to do with it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and all
I
the
was going to
questions in my head.
ask you, what do you recall some of those most pressing questions that you had when
Yeah, for
receiving the
sure.
diagnosis?
They just like came all at once. And the only thing I can think of is like, oh my gosh, Jason's boys and my boy, they're pretty athletic. That's all I could think of. They play football. They like to play basketball. Jason loves that. He enjoys that. Screaming on the sides, you know, to dribble the basketball, to throw the football. And I'm thinking like, is Jordan going to be able to do this? And it's it wasn't that important, but for some reason that really bothered me. So I told my husband, I said, he's not going to be able to play football maybe. Do you still love him? And he's like, of course I love him. He's my son. I will love him no matter what. It's okay. But for that whole entire day, me and him could not talk. It was like we were in a cloud. It's really hard to explain. But the news are so unexpected that you just like in your head all day. You can't get it off your head. And then you keep thinking in the future, in the future. And now I think back and it's not that important. Your kids are going to learn what you teach them. And there's so many resources now. Like Jordan can communicate. He he plays video games. He can play Xbox, Switch, Fortnite. You know, all these things that I never thought he would. He throws the football. He may not be good at football, but he throws the football with his dad and he knows what catches mean. He knows to play basketball, even though he can't, you know, he's too short still. So he can't really, you know, reach the hoop. But he loves it all and he can do it all. I feel like they can do everything just at their own timing. And so
Your experience with the diagnosis reminds me a lot of similar feelings that I felt.
yeah.
We found out Nash has Down syndrome in the delivery room after he was born. And
Yeah.
it's the craziest thing how where your mind goes. And I actually remember, thinking like my son will not play baseball. And
Right?
like, I get to play catch with Nash. will even be able to throw the ball. And it's the most unique thing to think that that's where your mind goes. But for some of us, that is where our mind goes. And you know, that there's a lot of symbolism behind that, just in relation to, I think, core memories and things that we have with our parents or our siblings, or just the desire for our children to experience similar things, you know, a happiness that comes through that.
And also, you don't want them to be any different than the other children. And at the very beginning, it was really hard for me to not compare, but now I'm over it. You know those IEP meetings that you have every 2 years? The first probably 5 years of those, I cried. I got over it. Now I just don't really bother. I don't care what they say. It sounds bad. But the other day, when I went to an IEP meeting, she was telling me something like, he can't say 3 words at a time, like in a sentence. And I'm like, you don't know Jordan's language. You don't speak Jordan. I was thinking that in my head. I didn't say that to her because, she's a teacher and she's a professional, so I didn't want to prove her wrong. And at the end of the day, I know. So I just honestly, I try to look at what the positive is, what he brings into our home and what he does for us. And it's just this love that it's just so hard to describe, and it's so pure. And it doesn't matter what you do, he still loves you. He worries about you. He's our everything. I mean, it's not scary. It's not scary.
How you talk about that first day with Jason, and
Yeah.
neither of you could really speak to one another, and I
Yeah.
get that. Like, I understand that. How did that go for Jason after that, though? And so, you were very vulnerable in sharing, just like the panic attack that you had and just the
Yeah.
emotion and feelings that you had. How was
Yeah.
that for Jason in those first few days?
I didn't wake up with Jordan.
Wow. Wow, that is a special bond with Jason.
My mom is behind me. So he's the best dad to Jordan, honestly. I couldn't ask for anybody better. He plays with him. When Jordan gets mad, he hits him. He will never respond back at him. Jordan is very, very spoiled, to say the least. Yeah, but for Jason, I don't think there was ever a time where Jason was questioning like anything about Jordan.
So, Sylvia, was it more difficult for you initially to bond with Jordan in comparison to Jason?
I still had the love for him, but there were certain things that I couldn't do because he had oxygen in his mouth. I couldn't breastfeed him. And then I still having panic attacks. Oh, I didn't go into that. I had panic attacks for the next 2 months every day, 3 times a day. I
Really?
tried a psychiatrist because I did not want to get on medication because kept on like breastfeeding him, and I didn't want that to affect the milk and all of those things. So I went to a psychiatrist. She showed me some tips of how to get rid of anxiety, but at the end of the day, like everything she would tell me to do would give me more anxiety. I think I just could not. I was too scared of everything. I was scared. I also had postpartum depression, obviously. And so, those thoughts that you hear when moms hold their babies and they're going down the stairs. And then
Yeah.
you think, my gosh, what if I drop him? Or if I see something heavy, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I just drop that on his face without even knowing that I'm doing it? And I would just try so quickly to get those out of my brain. But yeah, it was a panic attack, and after a panic attack, it was
I mean,
horrible.
that is
I
just
couldn't
a
function.
lot. That is a lot to take on. What was the turning point for you in overcoming that?
Well, after a month dealing with that, I decided, okay, I prayed. I tried all the things naturally. I even went and got oils and things like that. Nothing worked. So I decided to go to the doctor, and I found a doctor who gave me the right prescription, and I can't get off of it because every time I try, the panic comes back. I don't know. I think it all started with his birth, and then after that, I never been able to not. not take medication. I take one that you take every day, not something to make you go to sleep. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Well, and I have to say that a Down syndrome or disability diagnosis, especially in that moment of birth and welcoming your child into this world, for many of us, is a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And I know for me, it was less so for my wife, but definitely very much so for me, that was a time of the most raw and some of the most extreme emotion that I ever felt. And
That's
that
crazy.
that fear and that panic is a natural thing that happens in
And
those environments.
it's the opposite for me because your experience is different than mine. Because Jason was so in tune and he knew and he had faith that he was going to be okay and that things were all going to work out. So a few times I had to call him to come home because I had to take rescue medicine and go to sleep. And he would hold him all night, feed him, and did all the things. I couldn't really take care of him at night because I was not able. And then it just kind of carried on until he was like, I don't know, 7. And now Jordan figures that now he knows that his dad snores.
He
So he's
probably
like,
calls him
not
out on
you, Dada,
it.
Mama, you snore. So he can't handle it. It is hilarious. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. Sylvia, I'd love to talk to you about what you envision for the future of
For the
Jordan.
future, honestly, he's at a really good school with a really good program. It's a cluster. I have talked to the teacher, and her whole goal is that Jordan and all the other peers in the classroom are able to go all in the world and do something. We know maybe it won't be something huge, although I have seen lawyers with Down syndrome and professionals. Who knows if Jordan's gonna be lazy and not want to go to school anymore? But I can see Jordan working. I see kids that work at, I don't know, the grocery stores and things like that, at restaurants. I even seen a kid at a restaurant, and I totally see Jordan doing that. And I see him having so many friends, and not just Down syndrome friends. He has so many friends. So many. It's crazy. And did you say you adopted somebody from
We did. We
Asia?
have we have Nash is our biological son that has Down syndrome, and we adopted a little boy from China that has Down syndrome. His name's Cooper.
So I have his besties. They've been together since first grade. All the way, yeah, first grade, and now they're in seventh grade. Um, I have a friend. I'm not going to say their names, but yeah, she adopted a boy and a girl from China.
Really?
And they're Down syndrome. And they're the most amazing parents. I cannot believe it. I thought she only had 2. No, she has like 3 of her own, then or 4, and then she decided to adopt. And they're the sweetest. And so I think I sent a picture of Jordan with the little
Fun.
girl.
Way
They're
fun.
like they're best friends forever, and they're so overprotected of her, and no one can touch Jordan. It's hilarious. Yeah, I feel like they are just the same as any other kid. And they're the best. My experience having Jordan has humbled us in many ways, and it has impact our lives where we look at people and we do have a lot more compassion for others. I work at a cluster twice a week with other kids that have either Down syndrome or autism, and it's like the best job to have. And to get those hugs, and they're just so special. They really are.
I was
Working with them, and sometimes like people would be at the grocery store, they don't know what an autistic kid is like, and you maybe even me before judge like, my gosh, he's screaming, why don't they make
right.
him stop? But you don't understand. and, sorry, I just love those kids in my class, and they are so special, and it makes you feel like, what are they thinking? They don't understand what's going on. So they are needing love, and they still need to be taught.
Yeah.
And they'll get there somewhere.
I was at a conference last week. Andrea, my wife, and I went to New York City to a gala for the National Down Syndrome Society, NDSS.
Yeah.
And one of the speakers shared a quote that I just really resonated with me. She said, Down syndrome doesn't need a cure. Down syndrome is the cure. And I thought that was really insightful, because I know for much of my own frailties and shortcomings and maybe natural human tendencies, NASH has an ability to be able to ground us and to recenter us as a family. And it sounds like Jordan has the exact same impact on you as a mom, as a person, and also your family.
Yeah, for sure. And for people around him too. So, yeah.
That's why he's so popular at school.
I know. I told the teacher the first time that he was saying hi to everybody in the hallways, and everybody was saying back, and they knew his name. They were calling him, hi, Jordan, hi, Jordan. And I'm like, you only been in junior high for like a month.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, he's Mr. Social. She's like, Jordan's the social butterfly. So I love that.
We have similar experiences with our boys. We really can't go anywhere in public in American Fork where we live without somebody seeing them and recognizing them. And we went to a basketball game the other day, and we walked into the gym, and there's quite a few people there, and I could just hear kids like all over in the crowd yelling out Cooper, and groups just waving, and there's all these calls out for Cooper.
Cooper must be very social as well.
He's social. Yeah, he is a social boy.
There are some Down syndrome kids that are not as social as Jordan.
Yeah.
But they're all different. But the spirit that they bring to your home, you can't compare it to anything.
Most definitely. Well, Sylvia, I have really enjoyed having you as a guest on the show. And I just want to thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your experience, the good and the beautiful, as well as the challenges and those triumphs that you've had over those challenges. And so I think that you're a perfect mom for Jordan. And it sounds like he has an amazing dad as well. And I'm very excited to see the future for your children. And your family, because you're doing amazing work. Yeah, thank you so much for having me too. Yeah, absolutely. Sylvia, again, thanks for being a guest on the show. We'll wrap up now, but thank you. And please give a huge hug to Jordan from me. I will. Very good. Maybe he can meet Cooper one day. Let's do it. We might as well, because we're practically neighbors. So awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.